What's going on, you guys? Strange Religion here out of Midnight Nation, your local global emissary, with a very short video here on party effect buffs, the composition of the classes needed for some of those buffs, and then we're going to be diving into the very first dungeon here for Heron as a duo squad. It is a level 13 dungeon. We just defeated it pretty simple with 2 people. I actually think you could probably solo the first dungeon. And then we're going to be probably discussing a little bit in the comments section about some of these interesting class compositions that you need here, including some of these just really interestingly viable or non-viable party comps that would require just some very interesting party makeups, such as Request a Holy Knight, which is going to have all 5 classes except Paladin. And that's going to give you a recovery skill increase of 60% on those cooldowns. Can you beat the endgame dungeons without a paladin in your party? It's just really interesting to think of makeups like that, and a lot of these professional occupations will have those as well. But we're going to go ahead and start from the top and work our way down. I'm not going to go over every single one, but I will click on every single one for informational sake, and then I'll list those just below the video in the description. So you're going to be able to choose 2 different buffs here for combat, and then 1 for life. And the way your party is set up is how you're going to be able to choose these different buffs. So we'll start with combat. Party invitation is the easiest one. It's just 2 or more people of any classes, and you've got the stats up there on the right. So I'm just going to go through and we're going to click on each of these just for a couple of seconds, and then we'll go ahead and list them in the video as well. And generally, when you do have a level 1 situation, it's only going to require either 2/5 or 3/5 of what you would need for the level 2, which generally does require a full party to get those good buffs. So you can definitely see where it's going to be really interesting right at release for a lot of the players and guilds that are planning on going hardcore to have preformed parties set up with leveling. That way you can get some really interesting buffs, including movement speed increases and the reduction of stamina cost when riding mounts. And here's the great one. This is going to be 5 mages or rangers mix. You've just got 20% increase in damage done by long range attacks, crit rate increased by 10%. So there's some really good one for DPS. This one I really like. It's going to be 3 or more people with a guardian or a berserker, and then it's going to have 100% crits on your next attack every time you strike your target 6 times. So 100% crit is really good. Every 6th attack is going to guarantee a crit. Now we're moving away from these the attack-based ones into defensives. Phalanx here is maximum HP of 20% increased along with physical defense and magical defense, but you're going to need 5 guardians or paladins. Another great one here, Overcoming the Crisis, but you are going to need a mix of 5 assassins or rangers. And we're not going to have assassins, but you can expect most of these buffs to still be around with just a different tune there on the class bases. I really like this one as far as grinding goes and doing quests. When defeating an enemy, a movement speed of 50% increase for 2 seconds, which doesn't seem like that much, but you can often kill a lot of monsters. And we're going to see here as we move away from the party buff system into the dungeon just how quickly you can kill monsters even in a dungeon. So those bursts of speed could matter, especially if you're just grinding the dungeon out like we're going to be doing here over the next few minutes. Again, here's my favorite one. Any 5 classes except a paladin. This is going to be your really interesting one for endgame dungeons here. You only need 5 members. There's no class restrictions. It's going to be a 5% increased damage to bosses and 15% decreased damage from those bosses. Here we're getting into the 5 of 1 class. 5 guardians, very interesting and perfectly viable, I would say. If you have 1 tanking and 4 DPS, you could probably get through many of the early dungeons in the game. As far as the 5 class comp goes, I think mages have the best one. This is a berserker one, and this one's very specific because you have to actually be taking damage in order to trigger these. And then you also have to defeat an enemy in order to get that 5% life leech. So, I don't know, a 50% increase in damage is good. And then every time you take that 13% more damage, you're going to continue to pop this buff. So it has the potential to be good, but I think it's very situational. Compared to this Wisdom of the Wise Man, which is 5 mages, and this is just always going to be on. 40% increase in spell power, crit rate by 10%, and then elemental swapping when getting crits. Force Recon, not bad. This is for 5 rangers, so you're going to have a reduction in skill cooldowns and a little bit faster backward movement. If you stack that with some of the pets, which have legendary abilities like 150% increase in backward movement, you could start to see where moving backward could potentially be almost as fast as a forward walk or momentum. Here's 5 paladins. Definitely a viable choice in my opinion for people that are grinding and rushing to endgame. Having 5 paladins, especially if you had one tanking, 1 or 2 healing, or everybody off healing, I think you could easily run 5 paladins for any of the dungeons in the game from what I've seen so far. And then we'll skip assassination team, or I guess we'll just look at it. This is going to give you 50% increased damage when you're behind your enemies, along with the movement speed increase. So if you had 5 coordinated assassins, especially in PvP, that's going to be a fantastic buff. We'll go ahead and move over to life skills now. Some of these are interesting, especially if you wanted to power level one of your gathering. You're going to see things like this where your gathering speed is increased by 15% along with mining. But then if you had 5 players that were interested, 3 here or more, you're going to need a 25% increase. So definitely having 3 gatherers in a party, I'm sure you're going to see plenty of people in realm chat and local chat asking just to group together to do things like this. And it's a good way for social interactions to form within your guild, because you can just ask in the guild, looking for a couple people that just want to pick things up and do a little bit of crafting. And then you would just have your party leader switching. So you'd be, picking up things, and then you head to town with your mats and then switch on to the Wisdom in the Machine. I really like this one. This globalization one is going to be a 50% increase in master production and skills. And this is when you're going to have 1 of each crafting proficiency in your party. So you're going to have to form some pretty diverse groups for that one. And then you do have some skills in the life tree that are good for hunting as well in combat. This is going to be 3% increased XP. 5% hunting XP here, but they do have very specific things like you need a certain race or a certain skill. There's for the guild, which I do think a lot of people are going to be using at the start of the game as we move to increase the guild levels and the total cap of members. PvP one, gold acquiring one as well, adventure points. 100% increase in moving speed in water, that would be a very, very specific situation where you would need that. But if you were fast enough, especially in PvP, and you had people chasing you, and you just swapped to this party buff while swimming, maybe you could escape. Experience gained by hunting by 8%, but you're going to need several different races for that one. And then here's going to be ones that are more for your mount and pet. Alright guys, so that will take care of the party buffs for this particular group, and then we're going to go ahead and move into the first dungeon here, and we're just going to try to quickly run through it and duo it. We beat it last time on our first try very, very quickly. I think I forgot to reset though. Oh, it auto reset. Alright, cool. So we do have a couple quests in here. Wait. I need to go grab my quest. Sorry, one sec. My bad. The loading times are very fast for this game, especially considering you have this massive open world that doesn't have loading times. It's nice to be able to move throughout it fluidly and then have a pretty quick loading time from the dungeon back here into the real world. So this is the first dungeon for Hyron, Anarchist Dungeon. It's also considered... I like that it's under the domain, so I'm not sure what currently what the territory benefits are to having a territory, but I'm pretty sure, hopefully if there's taxes or something that the controlling clan can levy, they would get taxes just for people running this dungeon nonstop. And if that would be the case, I would say this would be one of your prime territories that you would want to take over in the beginning part of the game. As you have so many new players coming in doing this, you'd probably be getting a good amount of taxes. There's plenty of traps on the ground, like that one that I just missed. That's going to be a spike trap. It does low damage, but knocks you in the air. Here's the first boss, Drygen Stille. Now, shift is my iframe, and that will stop me from taking damage for the next 2 seconds. Now, any class can use any other class's armor, so although I do think it's important to run this dungeon over and over, even if you didn't want to, if you didn't seem like it would be worth enough experience or your time, you could easily just pick up, you know, a bunch of blues, just fill every slot with blues, then move past this dungeon, rather than waiting to specifically get all 7 of the set for your own class. But in this particular instance, we are going to be running this until we both get full sets for our class, just because it gives plenty of good experience. It seems like it's really fast, it's pretty fun, and it's very easy to grind. Once you learn where the traps are, they're fairly easy to avoid. Now that first trap that I went through, it does one-shot me, and I'll show you here coming up to it. I'll probably get hit by it, just so you know, and it is an AoE trap, so you could easily group wipe. That's why I think it's important for your tank or your group leader to run in and use your iframe there in order to trigger that trap. So here's the trap I'm talking about. It's obviously a very easy one to notice. You can also walk up and push F to neutralize it. But we're just going to go ahead and iframe through it again. I don't think I want to die during this video, but that does one-shot me. And the last time I got hit by it twice, even though it's really obvious. We were just so into pulling. We were trying to pull huge groups just to play around in the dungeon that it did end up killing me twice. I mean, you can see there's lots of monsters you could skip as well. I think when we pull the boss here, it will not actually pull all the ads, although he does summon ads himself. I feel like I iframed through that one, but maybe if you iframe, even if you're within the circle of loot there, or excuse me, the circle of loot, the circle of the AoE, that'll still hit you. Getting a couple more ranger items and some paladin items, so he is a paladin, that'll be good for him.
Your heart's so cold, I see it in your face from a mile away. Feel it in my veins
Also, the classes feel incredibly fluid to me. Just some really interesting abilities here. Definitely enjoying Berserker. I was kind of afraid based on a lot of the things that I read. People said Berserker is necessary because of its AoE damage. So I was kind of thinking that maybe it would be strong for AoE, but it would be a weak class overall for other ways. And in PvP, you are going to be melee, which means you're probably going to get tromped on. But I think with good coordination and good use of your iframes, such as shift, and your reactionary skills, I think you'd be fine as a Berserker. I do plan on maining Berserker on release. This particular room, you guys, is going to do damage over time, so what we do is we just run all the way through it, and then we pick up some of these other monsters over here, and then we just AoE everything down together. And the monsters are pretty weak. A lot of them you can one-shot. They don't do very much damage either. You'd probably be fine fighting them in that room as you walked, but rather than take that AoE damage over time, or excuse me, the damage over time from the poison, you know, we just bring them out here into the open. And then we also pull all the different mob packs together onto the main boss. So I think that you could probably beat this entire dungeon somewhere around 5 or 6 minutes. And overall, it just seems like it gives really good XP as far as grinding goes. And then you are trying to stack up all the blues for your level 14. That way you could get a full set as you move forward to continue that grind. So I'm not 100% what is going to be the best, you know, most efficient thing or like a good way to min-max here on release. But I do feel like what our group is going to do is we're probably just going to run this dungeon you know, 5 to 10 times in a row because it is so fast and it gives a lot of XP, man. 3,000 for each boss. Just getting a full level from doing that, a very easy way to get a full level, and then stack up all these blues. So you can definitely see where even though something's not good for your class, that the Paladin belt that just dropped is still going to be a really good item for me to wear. And then if you don't have your full set after, you know, 10 or so runs, you would probably just wear whatever you have and then continue on. It also depends how much XP we get from doing this dungeon, and whether or not we would consider that efficient. We're probably going to make alts, and then we'll run a couple characters through this once, and then quest, and we'll see if we can get more XP from doing this compared to questing. So this treasure chest was here last time, and it did contain some sort of recipe, and here is a blue shoulder piece. So that is the end of the first dungeon, you guys. There is little teleportations to the start of the dungeon, and then if you were to die midway or at the end of the dungeon, there's also ways right here. This will move you straight to the last boss, and then this will move you halfway through the dungeon. So overall, so far, we're only level 15, guys, but I'm really enjoying Bless. Very excited to be an emissary, and my clan is recruiting. Thank you guys for watching. That is the end of this video.